Hello everyone, welcome back. In this episode we will be talking about devolution. According to the UK Parliament website, devolution is the decentralisation of government power. Examples of devolution are the powers granted to the Scottish Parliament, the National Assembly for Wales, and to the Northern Ireland Assembly. In 1979, Scotland had a devolution referendum. During this time, the discovery of oil in the North Sea and the following It's Scotland's Oil campaign of the Scottish National Party, resulting in rising support for Scottish independence as well as the SNP. The party argued that the revenues from the oil were not benefiting Scotland as much as they should. The combined effect of these led to the Prime Minister Wilson committing his government to some form of devolved legislature in 1974. Under the terms of the Scotland Act 1978, an elected assembly would be set up in Edinburgh if the public approved it in a referendum held on the 1st of March 1979. A narrow majority of 51.6% to 48.4% voted in favour of a Scottish Assembly, but the Act also required that at least 40% of the total electorate vote in favour of the proposal. As the turnout was only 63.6%, the vote in favour represented only 32.9% of the eligible voting population, and the Assembly wasn't established. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, demand for a Scottish Parliament grew. It grew in part because of the government of the United Kingdom was controlled by the Conservative Party, while Scotland itself elected relatively few Conservative MPs. In the aftermath of the 1979 referendum defeat, the campaign for a Scottish Assembly was initiated as a pressure group, leading to the 1989 Scottish Constitutional Convention with various organisations, including such as Scottish churches, political parties, and representatives of industry taking part. Publishing its blueprint for devolution in 1995, the convention provided much of the basis for the structure of the Parliament. Devolution continued to form part of the platform of the Labour Party, which won under Tony Blair in May 1997. In September 1997, the Scottish devolution referendum was put forward to the Scottish electorate and secured a majority in favour of the re-establishment of the Scottish Parliament with tax-varying powers in Edinburgh. Of the 129 MSPs, members of the Scottish Parliament, 73 are elected to represent first past the post constituencies and are known as constituency MSPs. Voters choose one member choose one member to represent the constituency, and the member with the most votes is returned as a constituency MSP. The 73 Scottish Parliament constituencies share the same boundaries as the UK Parliament constituencies in Scotland prior to the 2005 reduction in the number of Scottish MPs, with the exception of Orkney and Shetland, which each retain their own constituency MSP. Currently, the average Scottish Parliament constituency comprises of 55,000 electors. Given the geographical distribution of population in Scotland, this results in constituencies of a smaller area in the central lowlands, where the bulk of Scotland's population lives, and much larger constituency areas in the north and the west of the country, which have a low population density. The islands of Orkney, Shetland, and the Western Isles comprise of a smaller number of electors due to the dispersed population. If a constituency MSP resigns from Parliament, this triggers a by-election in their constituency, where a replacement MSP is returned by the plurality system. The remaining 56 MSPs, called list MSPs, are elected by an additional member system which seeks to make the overall results more proportional, countering any distortions in the constituency results. 7 list MSPs are elected from each of the 8 electoral regions of which constituencies are subdivisions. All matters that are not specifically stated in Schedule 5 to the Scotland Act as reserved matters are automatically devolved to the Scottish Parliament. The Scottish Parliament has powers over areas such as agriculture, fisheries, animal welfare and forestry, environment, land registration and use, food safety and food standards, consumer advocacy and advice, water and sanitation, the Crown Estate, economic development and inward investment, income tax on non-savings and non-dividend income, issue of Scottish Government bonds to finance capital investment, council tax, business rates, air departure tax, land and buildings transaction tax, and Scottish landfill tax. Education, early, primary, secondary and tertiary, and training. Scots language and the Gaelic language, health and social care, abortion law, the legal system, human rights and legal aid, civil and criminal law, courts and tribunals, the legal profession, police and fire and rescue services, prisons and parole, that's 20, air-gun licensing, alcohol licensing, hunting with dogs and dangerous dogs, civil registration, census, demography, statistics and national archives, planning permission, local government, culture, sport, the arts, heritage and tourism, parking controls, bus policy, concessionary fares, cycling, taxis and minicars, railway services, franchising and the construction of new railways. Road network, trunk road management, road signs and speed limits, shipping, ports, inland waterways, harbours and ferries, housing, homelessness and the building standards, charities, onshore petroleum, heating and cooling, bank holidays, Sunday trading, welfare foods for pregnant women, mothers and children, and devolved social security benefits. That's a lot. That's a lot. Following the 1997 general election, the new Labour government argued that an assembly would be more democratically accountable than the Welsh office. For 11 years prior to 1997, Wales has been represented in the Cabinet of the United Kingdom by Secretary of State who did not represent a Welsh constituency at Westminster. a referendum was held in Wales on the 18th of September 1997, of which voters approved the creation of the National Assembly for Wales with a total of 559,419 votes, or 50.3% of the vote. Wow. The following year, the Government of Wales Act was passed by the UK Parliament, establishing the Assembly. On the 1st of July 1999, the powers of the Secretary of State for Wales were transferred to the Assembly, and the Welsh office ceased to exist. In July 2002, the Welsh Government established an independent commission with Lord Richard, former leader of the House of Lords, as chair to review powers and electoral arrangements of the National Assembly to ensure that it is able to operate in the best interests of the people in Wales. The Richard Commission reported in March 2004. It recommended changing the electoral system to the single transferable vote, STV, which would produce greater proportionality. In response, the British government, in its Better Governance for Wales white paper, published on the 15th of June 2005, proposed a more permissive lawmaking system for the Welsh Assembly based on the use of parliamentary orders in council. In so doing, the government rejected many of the cross-party Richard Commission's recommendations. This has attracted criticism from opposition parties and others. In July 2016, Assembly members unanimously agreed that the name of the Assembly should reflect its constitutional status as a national parliament. The Assembly Commission then ran a public consultation on the proposal, which showed that 61% of respondents agreed or strongly agreed that the Assembly should change its name. In 2018, the Commission announced its intention to introduce legislation to change the name of the Assembly. Later that year, the Llywydd, the Assembly's presiding officer, wrote to all Assembly members explaining that the name proposed in the bill would be the monolingual name Senedd. In 2019, the Senedd and Elections Wales Bill, favouring the name Senedd, was introduced on behalf of the Assembly Commission, following support of a subsequent amendment to the bill which favoured a bilingual name for the institution. The bill was passed by the Assembly on the 27th of November 2019 and was given royal assent on the 15th of January 2020. The Act changed the name of the Assembly to Senedd Cymru, or the Welsh Parliament. Its guidance states that the institution will be commonly known as the Senedd in both languages. The name change came into effect on the 6th of May 2020. Members of the renamed body are known as members of the Senedd MS or Aelodau'r or Senedd AS in Welsh. Under the additional member system, 40 of the MSs are elected from single-member constituencies on a plurality voting system or first-past-the-post basis. The constituencies being equivalent to those used for the House of Commons, and 20 MSs are elected from regional closed lists using an alternative party vote. There are 5 regions: Mid and West Wales, North Wales, South Wales Central, South Wales East, and South Wales West. Those are the same as the pre-1999 European Parliament constituencies for Wales, each of which retains 4 members. The additional members produce a degree of proportionality within each region, whereas voters can choose any regional party list, irrespective of the party vote in the constituency election. List MSs are not elected rather independently of the constituency element, rather elected constituency MSs are deemed to be pre-elected list representatives for the purposes of calculating remainders in the D'Hondt method. Overall proportionality is limited by the low proportion of list members, 33 in the Senedd, compared with 43% in the Scottish Parliament and 50 in the German Bundestag. The regionalisation of the list element and the lack of overhang seat compensation and levelling seats. Consequently, the Senedd as a whole has a greater degree of proportionality based on proportions in the list elections than the plurality vote system used for British parliamentary elections, but still deviates somewhat from proportionality. With the recently passed Senedd Cymru Members and Elections Act 2024, the voting system will be changed to a closed list proportional representation system using the D'Hondt method with 6 seats constituencies. This will be enacted in 2026 and may be used for the next election if it is scheduled for after then. In April 2020, the Senedd became the first legislature in the UK to meet over the internet. Due to the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic, it held First Minister's questions using Zoom video telephony software, and the session was subsequently broadcast by Senedd.tv. The Senedd has powers to pass bills. The Senedd has the competence to pass bills for acts of the Senedd Cymru in all areas which are not explicitly reserved to Westminster. These reserved matters are outlined in Schedule 7A of the Government of Wales Act 2006. This means the Senedd has powers over areas such as agriculture, fisheries, forestry and rural development, culture, economic development, education and training, environment, health and health services, highways and transport, local government, tourism and Welsh language. From June 1921 until March 1972, the devolved legislature for Northern Ireland was the Parliament of Northern Ireland, established by the Government of Ireland Act 1920, meeting from 1932 at Stormont outside Belfast. Due to the gerrymandering practices, the Parliament always had an Ulster Unionist Party majority and always elected a UUP administration. For its first 2 elections, it used proportional representation, but switched to first past the post in 1929. It was suspended by the UK Parliament on the 30th of March 1972 and formally abolished in 1973 under the Northern Ireland Constitution Act 1973. Northern Ireland was subsequently administered by direct rule until 1999, with a brief exception in 1974. Attempts began to restore on a new basis that would see power shared by nationalists and unionists. To see this end, a new legislature, the Northern Ireland Assembly, was established in 1973, with the power-sharing executive taking office in January 1974. However, this body was brought down by the Ulster Workers' Strike and Ulster Workers' Council strike in May 1974. Political discussions continued against the continued backdrop of the Troubles. In 1982, another Northern Ireland Assembly was established, initially as a body to scrutinise the actions of the Northern Ireland Civil Service and the Secretary of State, the UK Government Minister with responsibility for Northern Ireland. It was not supported by Irish nationalists and was officially dissolved in 1986. The Northern Ireland Elections Act 1998 formally established the Assembly in law under the name New Northern Ireland Assembly in accordance with the Good Friday or Belfast Agreement. The first election of the members of the New Northern Ireland Assembly was on 25th of June 1998, and it first met on the 1st of July 1998. However, it only existed in shadow form until the 2nd of December 1999, when full powers were devolved to the Assembly. Since then, the Assembly has operated with several interruptions and has been suspended on 6 occasions. The 11th of February to the 30th of May 2000, the 10th of August 2001, which was a 24-hour suspension, the 22nd of September 2001, 24-hour suspension, 14th of October 2002, to the 2nd of May 2007, the 9th of January 2017 until the 11th of January 2020, and 2022 to the 3rd of February 2024. Attempts to secure its operation on a permanent basis were initially frustrated by the disagreements between the two main unionist parties, the DUP and the Ulster Unionist Party, and Sinn Féin. Ulster Unionists representatives refused to participate in the Good Friday Agreement institutions alongside Sinn Féin until they were assured that the IRA had discontinued its activities, decommissioned its weapons, and disbanded. The Assembly has both legislative powers and responsibility for electing the Northern Ireland executive. The first and deputy first ministers were initially elected on a cross-community vote, although this was changed in 2006, and they are now appointed as leaders of the largest parties of the largest and second largest assembly bloc, and is understood to mean unionist, nationalist, and other. The Minister of Justice is appointed by cross-community agreement. The 7 other ministerial positions are distributed among winning parties, roughly proportionate to their share of seats in the Assembly by using the DONT method, with ministers chosen by the nominating officers of each party. While the Assembly was in suspension, its legislative powers was exercised by the UK government, was managed by the UK government, which governs through procedures at Westminster. Laws which have normally been within the competence of the Assembly were passed by the UK Parliament in the form of orders in council rather than acts of the Assembly. Further, when the Assembly suspended, certain devolved matters revert to the remit of the British-Irish Intergovernmental Conference, the BIIGC. The BIIGC guarantees the government of Ireland the same areas of bilateral cooperation and on those matters not yet devolved to the Assembly or the North-South Ministerial Council. Acts of the Northern Ireland Assembly, as with other subordinate legislatures, are subject to judicial review. A law can be struck down if it is found to exceed the competences of the Assembly, violate retained European Union law, are incompatible with human rights as codified in the European Convention on Human Rights, or discriminate against individuals on the grounds of political opinion or religious belief. A transferred matter is defined as any matter which is not an accepted or reserved matter. There is therefore no full listing of transferred matters, but they have been grouped into the responsibilities of the Northern Ireland executive members: agriculture, environment and rural affairs, communities, economy, education, finance, health, infrastructure, justice, and First and Deputy First Minister. Thanks for watching this long video. The last episode of Politics of Britain is about councils. Bye.